Ladies and gentlemen, we're actually with an old friend. Doug Thornton is now Senior Vice President of Stadiums for SMG, Stadium Management Group, and he's here in Oakland. It's great to see you.
Great to see you, Zanny. Good to be with you again.
Too. Now, I have to brag on you. I said I was going to do it. I'm going to do it. You spearheaded the effort to save the Superdome at a time when it looked like this New Orleans may even lose the New Orleans Saints. Talk about that for a moment. So.
Well, it's hard to talk about it without getting emotional, to be quite honest, particularly this week, because we will be celebrating Sunday, September 25th, the 5th anniversary of the reopening of the Dome just 5 years ago in 2006. Very difficult circumstances. As you know, Katrina ripped New Orleans apart, right. And with that, the Superdome, we lost 70% of our roof, allowing massive water to penetrate through and ruin all the finishes. People ask me all the time, well, how could it be so damaged? How could there be so much money involved? And I said, well, it's simple. What happens to your house if you lose your roof? When the water comes in, it ruins your carpet, your drywall, your ceiling tiles, your electronic equipment. We have some very expensive equipment in there. We have $7 million worth of scoreboards, $6 million worth of sound system, and 70,000 seats, 22,000 of which had to be replaced. So 2 million square feet of space. When you think about it, and you lose 70% of your roof, there's a tremendous amount of damage. Right. So there was a time when, when I left there, I was there for 5 days during the storm when we housed over 30,000 evacuees. That was a very trying circumstance for all of us. No water pressure, no running, no toilets, no functioning toilets, very little food and water, very limited medical supplies, and no way out.
Disturbing images have emerged in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, but some of the darkest went unrecorded inside the Superdome. Thousands of evacuees sought refuge in that shelter of last resort, only to be subjected to an unspeakable breakdown of law and order.
Hey, how did that affect you, by the way? Everyone's talking about what you did for other people, but how were you affected?
I lost 10 pounds during that 5-day, ensuing 2 weeks, but didn't really eat when I was in there. We had virtually no sleep. It was too hot to sleep because we had no air conditioning. Imagine, we lost all of our power systems. The HVAC wasn't running. We had no way to move any air in the building.
The hellish conditions inside the Louisiana Superdome were so bad, even those who were there have trouble describing it.
Many of our members have said it was worse than the Ground Zero experience in New York City. It was quite an intense experience, beyond.
It was sweaty, smelly, miserable conditions. But for that 5 days, I virtually, didn't sleep more than a couple of hours, maybe 3 hours a night at best, and I came away losing like 10 pounds. But it was very difficult, but, during that period of time, it was difficult for a lot of people. And, losing 10 pounds was a very small thing compared to some people who had lost their family members and their homes and their belongings. For me personally, I had 7 feet of water in our home. So my wife and I were homeless for a period of time. I say homeless. We had to evacuate and move to Baton Rouge, where I lived for 6-8 weeks before I could move back into the area. I couldn't move back into my home for almost 18 months. It took us 18 months to rebuild. But, my wife and I made a decision, like many of the New Orleanians that were affected by the storm. Probably, a lot of soul searching going on, family by family. It was a very difficult thing. It was very personal for everyone that was involved. Everybody's situation is different, how they were impacted. I mean, if you had small children, for example, that were in school, there were no schools open, so you had to move your kids somewhere. And could you move to Baton Rouge, or could you move to Shreveport, Louisiana, or maybe out of state like Dallas or Houston? But for us, my wife and I, we didn't have any small children at home, so we weren't as deeply impacted in that regard. But we made a decision early on, she and I, that we were going to rebuild our home. Even though we had 7 feet of water, we live within a half mile of one of the 3 major levee breaches that occurred on the 17th Street Canal.
Wow.
So we made a decision early on that we were going to be back in our house when others were still struggling with that decision. And I also made a decision that I wanted to stay and fight to try to rebuild the Superdome, because I felt like it was an important symbol for New Orleans, as well as an economic driver for New Orleans. And plus, for those of us who work there it's a lifestyle. It's not a job. You know, we spend so many waking hours of our day working in that building, 6-7 days a week, weekends, holidays, football games, national championships, whatever the case.
Yeah.
And losing that facility is like losing a loved one. And the best description I can give you, when I was in there watching the roof be peeled like an onion by Katrina, it was like watching a bully beat up on your best friend and not being able to stop. Not being able to stop it. And then when it's all over, the building, it feels like it's on life support. And it's one step away from death. And it's slowly deteriorating. The mold is setting in, the stench is setting in, the water is continuing to leak day after day, and you wonder what's going to happen. But it's so historic. You know, it's rich in history, that Superdome. There's been so many memorable moments that have played out there over the years. Michael Jordan's last shot to beat Georgetown in 1982 in the Final Four. Muhammad Ali beating Leon Spinks for the World Heavyweight Championship. The Pope visited there. We had a president that was nominated there. We had countless Super Bowls and Final Fours played in that building. So there have been many memorable moments, and we did not want to see this be the final chapter in the Superdome's history. So I felt, for personal reasons, that I had to come back and rebuild my home, and for personal reasons I had to try to fight to rebuild the Superdome and bring it back. Not knowing, of course, at that moment whether it could be done, but that was just mentally, for me, something I felt I had to do.
When did you realize, when did you turn the corner from, I'm not sure this is going to happen, to this is going to work?
I can tell you the day that I had a glimmer of hope. It was September 30th. Now that's, just by the calendar, that's almost 1 month after the storm. Katrina impacted to hit New Orleans on August 29th.
Right.
And what we did was, of course, we had the 5 days when the evacuees were there. We were able to get them out on day 6 and day 7. It took 2 days to get everybody out of the building. And then I came back to the building 3 days later by helicopter and toured the site, and it was devastated. And that's when I called the architects who had worked with us prior to Katrina on thinking about a master plan for the building. You may recall the Saints were beating the drums for a new stadium.
Right, I remember.
They were basically saying to the state, who owns the Superdome, we want a new place to play. You either got to renovate this building or show us how it can be renovated, or you've got to build a new one. So we had been working on plans and specifications for a renovation. We had a master plan done. Thank God, that was a salvation for us. So I called the architects who had been working on that prior to the storm, and I said, can you assemble a team of specialty consultants to get in here and evaluate all of the conditions, the structural steel, to see if it's still intact? Can you look at how the roof can be repaired? Can you look at all the low voltage systems, you know, meaning the lighting systems, the systems that run all the computers, the scoring systems, all of those kinds of things. So they had 16 different specialty consultants that came in and evaluated the building. It took 2 weeks to do it. So to answer your question, it was on September 30th, right outside my office on the plaza level, we call it, on the outside of the dome. I stood there with Paul Griesmer, who is the lead architect for Ellerby Beckett, architects based out of Kansas City, and he said, the bones of the building are good. Your structure is fine. We're not sure about your ventilation system, your HVAC system, the mechanical, but assuming that can be rehabbed, we think the building can be rebuilt. It's going to cost over $200 million, and it's probably going to take over 2 years to do, but we think it can be done. 12 days later, I was sitting with the governor, Kathleen Blanco, state of Louisiana, with an agenda. At the top of that agenda was a statement that the Superdome can be rebuilt. It's going to take over $200 million, and it's going to take probably over 2 years. But there were 2 key things that we pointed out when we presented this to the governor. One, the symbolism. It's 2 million square feet of space. It was the poster child for misery and suffering during Katrina.
Sure was.
This is your chance to change that image. If there's one symbol of Katrina, negative symbol, it was the Superdome. And the minute we rehab this building, people are going to be inspired. They're going to have hope for their city, that their neighborhoods are going to come back, that the downtown hotels will come back. So symbolism is very key. Number two, it was jobs. Superdome is a major economic driver for that community. Not just the New Orleans Saints and not just the New Orleans Hornets who play in the arena right across the street, but all of the other events that we do there, the BCS Championship, the Sugar Bowl, the Bayou Classic, all the convention business that we do. We are a major cog in the wheel of tourism down there, and the hotels would not have been able to get restarted as quickly and reopened as quickly if they didn't think the Superdome was going to be rebuilt. So, to the governor's credit, at a very, very controversial time, when roads and bridges and schools and hospitals all needed to be repaired, she said, I agree with you. We must rebuild it. And we have to do it because of the jobs and the symbolism. So with that, on October the 12th, 2005, we were off to the races. And we then had meetings with FEMA. The NFL contributed money into the reconstruction. We refinanced our debt. The Louisiana Stadium Exposition District. Right. We did a $295 million refunding of our debt and issued $42 million in new capital, which we then used to put back into the building. And of course, FEMA was the largest contributor, paying over $150 million towards what turned out to be a $336 million complete redo.
That's not widely known.
Almost half of the money came from disaster recovery dollars through the federal government. So in effect, Cindy, what's happened over the last 6 years, we now have a brand new stadium as a result of the storm. And I tell people all the time, the lesson that I learned out of this is, out of disaster sometimes comes opportunity.
What did you learn about yourself?
Well, I think what I learned about myself is that there were two other things, I guess, that life lessons. One is the power of the human spirit. You know, there's something in the human DNA that allows you to pull yourself up off the ground when you're at the lowest of the lowest level. And I remember flying out of there on that fifth day by helicopter. I was by myself on that chopper. And I never will forget looking back over my left shoulder and seeing the Superdome as we left New Orleans, and I could see, I asked the helicopter pilot to fly over my neighborhood so I could see my neighborhood. Mm-hmm. On the way out of town to Baton Rouge, we're flying west. And I never will forget looking down at my street, and that's when it hit me. Our home is gone. I look back over my left shoulder and I see the glistening water for miles and miles. And then I see the Superdome in the distance with the roof peeled off. My Superdome is gone. And my city may be gone. So what did I learn about myself? At that particular point, I got to tell you, I was so emotional. I don't mind telling you, I wept all the way to Baton Rouge. It was a 45-minute helicopter flight. And for me, that was the lowest point. That was the absolute lowest. I'd been in there for 5 days, struggling with others to keep the place going, and now I have nothing. I have no home, I have no building, no job, and I have potentially no city. So what I learned is there's the power of the human spirit. You cannot ever underestimate it, and I think God gives everybody an ability to look inward, and there's something in our DNA that allows you to pull yourself up at a time like that and summon the courage and say, you know what, I'm going to fight. So I learned that about myself, you know, that at the lowest point you can somehow summon the courage. You can't quit. Right. You got to fight back. And the other thing I learned, I guess, through all of this about myself is you've got to be prepared to accept life's challenges. You never know when something's going to happen to you or to your family or to your city. It could be a hurricane, it could be an earthquake.
Right.
In California,
right.
It could be an earthquake.
Or in New York or Washington nowadays.
Any natural
wow.
disaster, or it could be a personal situation,
mm-hmm.
an illness. Mm-hmm. It could be a job loss. But life, they say it's a journey, I believe that, but you never know when things are going to present themselves to you, a challenge. And you've got to be prepared to accept that challenge and deal with it. So for me, Katrina was that moment. It was a defining moment. I could have easily relocated to another city, my wife and I talked about it, quite frankly. I mean, like every other
Right.
New Orleanian
Right,
at the
yeah.
time, over
Yeah.
1 million of us were displaced.
Right, yeah.
So we struggled with that, and you know, I just felt like this was a moment where I had to accept the challenge to rebuild the Superdome. And I told her, I said, look, I want to give it 1 year. If I can't see measurable progress in 1 year, then we'll maybe think about moving and go somewhere else. But I feel so strongly about this. If we leave, and others who were affected by the storm like us, that were the tax base and the people who make up the fabric of the city, leave, there will be no city. So
That's right.
So that's what I learned
That's right.
about myself. Power of the human spirit. There's something in the human DNA that allows you to somehow overcome that emotion and look inward. And it's in everybody. It's not just me.
Yeah.
Everybody has that. It's a God-given thing that we have in our DNA.
Yeah,
That's,
you know, also, cities are expression of us too. You know,
cities are an
forgotten.
expression of the
So when they're hurt,
of the personality.
react,
Well,
you know,
and you know
well.
that's a very good point. People, you know, ask me about that all the time about what is your most proud moment. Well, the proudest moment for me was the day we reopened 5 years ago, September 25th, 2006, on that special Monday night against the Falcons.
one of the highest rated in history.
Highest rated in history. You know, they're still talking about.
ESPN Southern Grudge match with Turning the Heat, Falcons and Saints down on Pleasant Street. An NFL tradition, every man's right, but ultimate gig comes on Monday night. Come on, get it. You gotta
And they're here for the return in New Orleans to receive. A moment almost unimaginable 13 months ago is here. The NFL, the Saints, back in New Orleans, back in the Superdome. Vic lost the football. Goes out of bounds. New Orleans did not have possession. It's still Atlanta ball, but it's fourth down. Fujita came in and freed it out of Vic attempts this year, is now back to just punting and kicking off. The former Saint Morton Anderson is here for most field goals. Look out! Right through! A kick block by Steve Gleason. It is scooped and scored by Curtis DeRoche. Touchdown, New Orleans! Goes to Horn side. This is first down. It's in the hands of Bush. It's in the hands of Devery Henderson, the former LSU Tiger, in the end zone in the Louisiana Superdome. Touchdown, New Orleans.
Particularly this week in New Orleans, there's a long series in the newspaper about that particular week and that game. It was called the homecoming game because all of New Orleans was coming home for that game on Monday night, and the entire country and the world in many places were watching this event. And the proudest moment for me was when U2 and Green Day took the stage. You may not remember how this all played out, but I remember it very vividly. U2 and Green Day were brought in by the NFL to play a special set.
Right, I do remember it.
And during
Yeah,
the pregame,
right,
and they
right,
wrote a song
yeah.
called "The Saints Are Coming," and it was about a 12-minute set on the field. And what was significant about it is that the house lights went out. We took the house lights all the way down so that we had just the spots on the performers. And I didn't realize until that moment when the house lights went down that the light level was eerily similar to the early hours of August 29th when the roof was coming off.
Oh, wow.
Because remember, Hurricane Katrina hit the Superdome about 5:30, between 5:30 and 6:30 a.m. was when the roof was really being impacted. So it was right at dawn, right at the break of day, and the power went out, so it was very dark in there. So the minute those lights went down for the U2 Green Day performance, it gave me sort of a chill in my spine. It made me reflect back immediately to that day when the roof was being blown off. And I suddenly realized, I guess it hit me right then, it was a wash of emotions. I looked around the stadium, and the stadium was full of people. And I said, you know, this is the first time that there have been people in all of those seats. And I looked around, and I saw 70,000 people with seats filled. They were standing, and they were cheering. And I have to tell you, I had an immediate flashback of what happened during Katrina. And I, as I was looking at those people standing there, I couldn't help but see the huddled masses shielding themselves from the rain. Many family members, young children, grandmothers, grandfathers, protecting themselves from the rain falling in. That was the flashback I had. And I looked up where the roof had been ripped apart, where there was a 15-foot wide, 100-foot long gash, and all of a sudden, it's gone. So I realized right then, you're talking about the personality.
Right.
The building had taken on its own personality. It was on life support. It was sick and dying. And somehow it had been resuscitated over a 9-month period by those of us who felt so strongly about it. 850 men and women working on that job 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, to put it back together with one mission, one purpose. Play a football game on September 25th, 2006, and now it was manifested right here. But I realized that it was the people who gave the building the life. The building is just steel and concrete. But it had taken on sort of this personality, and the personality that night and the energy that night was so powerful. And I can't tell you how much I cried right there. It was very emotional for me. I get emotional just thinking about it. But
so do I. It's an incredible moment.
It's an incredible story. I mean, about the resiliency.
And it were not for the fact that I was about to lose my second father, I was going to fly down there and help you out. That's what I was going to do at the time.
Well, I have to tell you, there were a lot of people that flew in from all over the country, and I remember the California 6 disaster team was embedded with us there at the Dome. So you had some of your California colleagues here that were working with us for the disaster relief during that 5 days.
And so now we are here in Oakland talking about SMG in the Oakland Coliseum, and I have to say candidly, as a guy who has a long history, I'm glad you're here. So let's talk about what SMG now is going to do at the Coliseum, your involvement in your role.
Well, I think SMG's, we've been here 13 years working for the Joint Powers Authority. We've had a very good relationship with our board, and I think we've made some measurable progress. If you look at the history of our performance, we've been able to grow the number of non-sports team events. I mean, we really are measured by the business that we bring in that is not sports team related, because obviously the Raiders have their 10 games there, the Warriors will have their 42 games in the arena, and the A's will have their 80 games in the stadium. So we are trying to generate business beyond that, whether it's monster trucks or Supercross in the spring, which we were able to lure away from AT&T Park because of our relationship with Feld Motorsports, or it could be the concerts that we're putting in the Oracle Arena.
And to be noted, AT&T Park is managed by Giants Enterprises, so you've got a competitor.
That's a competitor for us, and one of the strengths of SMG is that we control 1.7 million seats around the country, and we have relationships with promoters like Feld Entertainment, who owns the Monster Truck Supercross series. Those are two very large events that we were able to take out of downtown San Francisco and move to Oakland that have been very successful, that have generated income for the authority. So just an example of how we use our leverage to benefit the complex.
How do you see the relationship between SMG, the authority, and the city changing? Because one of the complaints is that the city doesn't hear and the council enough reports about what's happening.
In terms of
like an annual report to the council?
Well, we're required to do an annual plan, which we present to the board each year, and it's very detailed. It's how we're going to handle the finances, what our budget is going to be, how we're going to be held to those standards, how we're going to market the facility, maintenance, capital improvements. So that plan is submitted to the board on an annual basis, and they approve it. And that becomes our measuring stick, and that becomes what we look to in terms of the guidance for not only spending, but for revenue generation. And there are monthly board meetings where we attend and we provide updates. There's been some talk about having a more robust and open reporting system. Frankly, that's what we do in a lot of our other facilities. But it depends on the commission. You know, each commission is different in the way they want their information. But we are required, just so you know, to provide monthly reports at the board meetings, and we do that. We had a board meeting today, earlier this morning, and presented information to the board on operations, capital improvements, marketing, advertising, some of the customer service things that we've initiated this year. One of the neat things I'll tell you real quick on that front is we just had MC Hammer do a video for us. He was great, by the way. He's fantastic.
He's a good guy. I like him. Yeah.
And the real purpose of the video was to provide fans with a little information about how to get to the stadium on game day. It's called Have a Game Plan. One of the things that we experience in New Orleans is that everybody wants to come to the game at the last minute, and traffic routes are always clogged. So what we've tried to encourage people to do is have a game plan, so you don't miss a play, you don't miss a shot, you don't miss a pitch, whatever it may be, concert, baseball, football. Have a plan when you go to the stadium or the arena complex. What route are you going to take? Where are you going to park? So Hammer did this great video for us, which is going to be embedded on our website. It'll be linked to the team's websites, which talks about parking, traffic, what routes to take. We're also developing a smartphone app that can be downloaded by the fans and the customers that will allow you to literally stick a pin in the map so you don't lose where your car is parked.
Excellent idea.
Be able to find a friend in the stadium.
Excellent idea.
So
like
those are just little things that we're rolling out as customer service benefits.
Curious, because the NBA lockout, the Warriors' season is in jeopardy as we speak now, and a good friend of mine who's a sports economist has this specific question. He said, the players are talking about, as you might know, forming a players development league. If they wanted to play at the Coliseum, would they be allowed to do so, or they couldn't? Okay.
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know the details of that, but my guess is no. The Warriors have the license agreement to present professional basketball, and it would be probably an exclusive situation with respect to the NBA players. And I'm not sure how that would work with the contracts. You know, if they were to split off and not be subject to the NBA contracts, how that would all work. But my guess is probably not.
How is that going to be handled? Because I'm losing 47 home games. If the season, you know...
Well, it certainly will impact the team more than it impacts the authority. And it won't impact SMG because SMG doesn't derive any revenues from the team activities.
How do you derive revenues?
Our revenues are derived from the non-sports team events, the performance. We're basically on a performance-based contract. We get paid a very small base fee, and we're judged by the events and the activities and the revenues that we generate that are not sports team related, because we can't control
Monster Truck, for example.
Monster Trucks or Britney Spears or R. Kelly that we just hosted. Any of those concerts generate revenue, which help lower the JPA's deficit, the authority's deficit, and there's a...
Don't we need a sports authority here? I keep saying that. It's
you mean like a sports commission to promote sports? Yeah. Well, most cities have them. I'm surprised.
Which would help you guys. Well, I started one for the Super Bowl. That's another story off later, but that would help you guys.
That's we have those in Houston, New Orleans, Jacksonville, other cities. I'm not sure if Chicago, where we manage Soldier Field, whether we have one there or not, But yeah, the purpose of the Sports Commission is to go after the amateur-related events or the big special events, because so often teams are not. That's not their focus. They're focused on team sports, pro sports, not special events to some degree. Now, case with the NFL would be a little bit different. Obviously, you'd have to have the Raiders participate. If there was going to be a Super Bowl, they would be the lead entity on that bid process. But if you were going to try to bring a Pac-12 championship here, let's say, that would have to be spearheaded, I would think, either by the CVB or the Sports Authority.
Kind of open the door. You think we'll get together and try a Super Bowl again, other than what I did, or am I going to be the lone guy in history?
Well, I think certainly, I know the NFL would love to come back out to the Bay Area. The recent history of the NFL has been to reward those cities that have made major investments into their sports infrastructure. We're going to host a Super Bowl in New Orleans in 2013.
Congratulations, by the way.
Well, thank you. But we spent $336 million to rehab our facility and extend our lease with our football team through 2025. New York is getting a Super Bowl, as you know, because the new stadium up there, which is now 2014,
right?
2014, which is called MetLife Stadium. Indianapolis has been rewarded Lucas Oil Stadium, where the Colts are playing, which has been open now 3 years, is going to host the Super Bowl in this football season. So the trend has been in the NFL to reward those cities that make major investments into their sports infrastructure and their football stadiums. As a way to reward them, they provide a Super Bowl. So I would say that absent any major investment or new stadium in Oakland, it would be a challenge to have a Super Bowl here. But certainly, I know the NFL loves coming to California and would certainly love to be back, I'm sure, in the Bay Area, because years ago they hosted Super Bowls back at the old, I think at the Stanford Stadium in Palo Alto.
How can fans visiting the stadium help SMG? In other words, through their behavior.
Well, that's an interesting point. I think it's a focus right now in the NFL, fan behaviors.
Right.
And it's not just an NFL issue. It's Major League Baseball. As you know, the Dodgers had a major incident down there this year. I think in general, fan behavior has become a hot topic. Several years ago, we had the fight with the Indiana Pacers that involved several people in the stadium against, the
Ron Artest.
Ron Artest,
yeah,
that's
or,
right.
Excuse me, Meta World Peace.
Meta World Peace.
That's his name now. That's right.
So that's been a real hot topic lately because there have been so many incidents. So what we encourage people to do is come to the game, bring your family, enjoy your experience, and act responsibly. Drink responsibly. You can be excited about your team and pull for your team, but you don't have to take it out on the opposing team fan, or someone else who may want to enjoy the game. And the NFL has implemented the Fan Code of Conduct, which you're familiar with. They've had it in place for 3 years now.
Right.
We've got the text messaging at the O.Co Stadium, which has worked very well. We work closely with the Raiders to monitor.
In other words, if you see something wrong, say it, right?
See something, say something. That's our motto. That's the motto of the Homeland Security Director as well. And it's worked. In Oakland, thank goodness, we'll knock on wood, but our number of incidents have decreased. We've got a great relationship with the OPD, the ACSO. They do a great job.
Increased, you mean decreased?
Decreased. The number is decreased. The number is decreased. And I think it's a tribute to the law enforcement officials here who have really worked closely with us to integrate themselves into the tailgating experience and visit with the fans and ask them to drink responsibly and get to know them out in the parking lot, to have a good day. So we have
we have good fans here. So
we have good fans. You have a very good fan base. Yeah. The Black Hole is a world-renowned entity there in the end zone. I mean, it's a great thing. That's what makes football so great. And you want to preserve that, and you want to celebrate it, but you want to be responsible. So what fans can do when they come to the stadium is think about their actions before they do something. Don't do anything stupid, and you know what we're talking about.
Right.
And the fan just to follow the Fan Code of Conduct. No foul language. Be respectful. If you've got a young person sitting next to you, watch your language. Don't stand up and throw beer on someone.
Right.
That's just going to get you in trouble.
Will there be increased security? Some people have talked about changes in security.
I think unfortunately we're probably headed there. If you look at what goes on in Europe with the soccer stadiums, they banned alcohol sales. We don't want to get to that point. I know many of the team owners around the league don't want to see that. The facility managers don't want to see that. The fans don't want to see that. But in Europe, they stopped alcohol sales. No beer, no alcohol sold to the general public except in these suites.
Wow.
And even in the suite area, they have a shade that they drop down so that the people in the lower bowl can't see the folks in the suites consuming beer. So we don't want to get to that point, but I have to tell you, if the number of incidents around the nation in all sports venues can't come under control, if people can't control themselves, then I'm afraid we are going to see increased security. What we don't want to have is a situation where we got to run everybody through a metal detector. That'll slow the process, 70,000 people, which is what we do for a Super Bowl, but it takes hours to load people in to the stadium when you do that. That's not the best outcome for the fans. The best outcome for the fans is to act responsibly, do the right thing when you get there, have fun, celebrate your home team, wear the jersey, but don't throw beer, don't use foul language. Don't take a swing at someone just because they're wearing a different color jersey or don't think the way you do. And that's just good behavior to think about on a daily basis anyway. But it is a focus of the NFL, and we want fans to act responsibly when they come in. But I will tell you this, back to the text messaging. We've implemented that here as a best practice, which the NFL has asked us to do in all of our stadiums. It has worked very well. We have a zero tolerance in this market, and I'm talking about in Oakland, for unruly fan behavior that is outside of the NFL fan code of conduct. And the Raiders support that. We support it. The law enforcement officials enforce the rules, and I think that's what will keep the ODOTCO Stadium a safe environment for families. We want to encourage that because it's important to have those people come out and cheer for their team.
Doug, I could talk to you forever, but I will talk to you later.
Okay,
I want to say, I'm glad you're here.
Well, thank you very much.
Welcome to Oakland. I'm glad you're representing SMG.
Well, we're glad to be here too. I think SMG's had a long history with the city of Oakland, and we want to continue that. We think we have a lot to offer. We're looking forward to the future. The Warriors have new ownership. Looking forward to working with them as well to improve the fan experience and continue to do a good job out there. And we're always willing to listen to feedback. So if anyone has any comments on what we can do to improve, we'll be happy to do that.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.